Okay, yeah, so he said, I need some help to connect. I've reached out to Zach George a few times to invite him to join me in conducting a study comparing the effectiveness and ethical considerations of positive reinforcement only and quote-unquote shock-based dog training methods. Given our collaboration with a respected canine research lab, I believe Zach's participation would demonstrate his commitment to evidence-based practices he promotes to the millions of people who follow him on social media. The offer remains open, and we hope he'll consider it for the great benefit of dogs and their owners. In this world, per that conversation we had last week with Danny, there are serious things moving in the dog world and people trying to destroy what it is that we're doing, right? And in the UK, they were almost successful. You could have your dog taken from you. You could be charged tens of thousands of dollars in fines. You could be put in jail over some of this kind of stuff.
Yep.
All for the things we do every single day to help our clientele, right? While you got doofuses like this on the fucking internet with 3.7 million subscribers just on his YouTube channel alone that are weaponizing those followers to shut down anybody that is making a name for themselves that's helping clients. Okay, so basically what he's saying is we already have a study that was done. But as the years go on, and no different than he disproved Ivan's studies due to the age of those studies, your studies are getting older by the day. So at what point do your studies become disproved due to the fact that they're old? And wouldn't you want to stay current on continuing to prove your side of the equation? So what he's saying right there is, I'm scared that your results will prove falsely that you're right. All of your other studies that you have state that you could test for stress, you could test for fear, you could test cortisol levels, you could do all of those types of things, right? So just conduct the study in a way that if you're so good at recognizing the stress or fear responses, I'm sure a trained scientist that knows what they're doing would not be deceived by that, Zach George. What he's saying is, I'm not going to be a part of a study unless the study is done with an intentional bias to prove that the shock-based methods are bad. Because all of the studies that have been done so far are done with the bias of intentionally trying to figure out a way to study what they're studying in a way that makes them look bad or puts them in a bad light. So the studies, you see how they can be spun in a way that proves whatever point it is you're trying to do. And Zach George knows that we can do the exact same thing. And now we have the funding to be able to do the exact same thing. We have the resources to do the exact same thing. So I don't want to be a part of it because your study might prove you're right. So basically, a long-winded way of saying, I'm not going to do it because you might prove that you're right. Don't you care about the dog's emotional well-being when that's the exact thing that he's trying to study?
Yes.
So I replied, I'm glad you responded to the invitation. I have zero interest to go further, trying to convince you the year is 2023, which means that any study that is conducted today must meet ethical standards. That is the beauty of it. No one is interested in strapping a collar on a dog and abusing them. This isn't the goal or focus of one of the world's most esteemed canine research institutions and universities. Now, the reason why I said no one's interested in strapping a collar on the dog and abusing them is because most of the studies that are done in a way to try to paint the e-collar in a bad light have been done in a way where the tool has been misused or intentionally used in very extreme, unfair ways to try to show an increased stress response in cases.
Yeah. So as it happens, while I was scripting this video, Zach made a video following up his most recent political opinions where he shows us how he trains a dog to interact with a big city environment. And I just gotta say, thanks, Zach. Now I don't have to go and give your channel a bunch of clicks and views looking for a good example to show people the difference between your dog training and actually good balanced training using aversive tools.
I'm Zach George, I'm a professional dog trainer. I don't use choke prong or electric collars, and we are on a mission to show you how we train our dogs everything. Today's episode, Veronica is about 9 months old, and she's about to have a very novel first-time experience.
We're gonna take Veronica on a walk in a brand new place.
Our main objective today is exposure to a bustling city.
We've got our first major distraction of the day. We've got a dog straight ahead there. We have dogs over here.
That sometimes presents a challenge.
4-foot leash, flip to you.
Wow, we're starting out great with the completely non-aversive, force-free dog training by attaching a 4-foot leash to a dog so that it can never leave us. But you know what? It's fine that he has his dog on a 4-foot leash at all times because I don't trust him to train a dog to walk off-leash either.
First major distraction of the day. We've got a dog straight ahead there. We have dogs over here.
That sometimes presents a challenge.
4-foot leash, flip to you. We're always extra vigilant in places like this. Like here you go, here's 2 off-leash dogs, and they're doing okay. We always want to be aware of them. These dogs seem very well behaved and under control, but you don't want to assume too much. Cities have a lot of variables.
It's going to be impossible to focus on things that I cannot control, so I'm going to focus on what we can control.
Bree has picked up Veronica. No reaction. There's no point in having the dogs cross at close range. Even if she's being perfect, you don't know every dog in the world. You don't know how they're going to react.
Well, that was tight quarters.
It's a nice plus of having a small dog.
When I go to a city with a dog, I'm not letting my dog come into contact with other dogs. There's a time and a place for that, but when we're out on a venture like this,
Our dog safety is always the first consideration. One of kind of the silly myths in training dogs is that picking up dogs somehow makes them overly dependent on you. It's a form of coddling them. I've never really bought into that. I don't really get it.
Well, it's management, not training, right? Picking her up so she doesn't bark isn't the same as teaching her not to bark. It's also not rewarding her for something.
but in this case, we're going to fall back on management because Veronica does not yet know the skill of staying right by our side while we pass dogs that she doesn't know at close range in a brand new city that she's never been to.
Wait just a minute.
In this case, we're going to fall back on management because Veronica does not yet know the skill of staying right by our side while we pass dogs that she doesn't know at close range.
They've been training this dog that weighs maybe 15 pounds at the absolute most for 8 months. A dog without any sort of aggression history that I'm aware of, and it still doesn't know how to walk nicely on a 4-foot leash past other dogs. This is like the equivalent of saying, yeah, my child is 15 years old, but I still need to hold their hand and keep them close to me everywhere we go, like they're 2 years old, because I can't trust them not to run out in front of cars randomly. Which, I mean, that's a perfectly valid way of parenting if you have a disabled child with Down syndrome who never mentally developed past the age of 2. But something is wrong if you still have to do that with a completely cognitively healthy teenager, which is essentially what an average 1-year-old dog is. And you know, that's really my problem with this, is that when you so completely bubble wrap a dog from being a proper, trustworthy participant in the real world like this, what you're essentially doing is turning a healthy dog into a disabled dog, purely through your training methods. Zach would, of course, claim it's the other way around, and that, you know, he gives his dogs all this agency and this choice, and it's all of the other dogs that are trained with these mean tools that are the dogs that are being turned into disabled dogs who can't deal with the real world. But I think we've already established, first of all, that Zach is a liar, and 2, I think it speaks for itself when other dogs can reliably be off leash when they're 1 year old, whereas his can't even be off leash after 3 years of training.
I like to carry her rather than walk her. It's pretty busy here as we cross this crosswalk.
I don't know what they think of as a busy crosswalk in a city, but that's not it. I've been to big cities, and this is a slow day.
In the comments of my YouTube videos, I've noticed a lot of people will say something like, well, Zach, there's more than one way to teach a dog, so positive reinforcement isn't the only way.
Okay, so much for not pulling, I guess.
This is how this dog walks on a leash after 8 months of training. Speaks for itself.
What a lot of people are failing to realize is that there are 1,000 ways that you cannot use aversions in your dog training.
Being tolerant to pulling like this is pretty important when you're training them, taking them to new places.
And this is one of those unplanned variables that just presents itself.
Got a barking dog over here. Right there. That was another barking dog right there.
I'm sorry, but you went to the big city. You've passed about a dozen dogs already. You already know you're going to pass dogs again. This isn't an unplanned variable. This is just you being an unintelligent human being who pretends to not know how the real world works to try and impress all of the people without common sense who follow you.
One of those unplanned variables that just presents itself.
Got a barking dog over here. Right there. That was another barking dog right there. Yeah, can you get her attention on you? Well done.
Maybe we can focus on teaching Veronica to look at us or pay attention while the dog is in the distance.
Oh, and just look at how well that dog responds. It took your treat and then went right back to trying to engage with a distraction.
Yeah, can you get her attention on you? Well done.
Maybe we can focus on teaching Veronica to look at us or pay attention while the dog is in the distance.
And of course you'd say it's not that bad, but imagine that this is how you have to walk your dog every day because the last 8 months of constant training just didn't stick, and you're essentially starting from ground zero the moment you go anywhere the dog has never been before, which basically means that you didn't train the dog.
couple of things that Bree and I are considering. We don't want to continue to approach a barking dog. That could just escalate both dogs, and we don't want to create that precedent. Perfect. Essentially, this is being done in the spirit of changing as few variables at a time as possible. So we want to minimize the likelihood of her having a significant stress response, which she will then correlate with being in places like this in the future. You can see how we keep those brain chemicals nice and controlled, approach the situation slowly and methodically, that we are not creating more problems for ourselves in the future. Another common way to kind of test your dog and see are they receptive to learning new things is to ask them to sit. Can I get sit? Easy to get her to sit anywhere else. Private busy street, not so easy.
Do I even need to say it? Do I really?
Yes.
It's almost like you can see her thinking, sit, what's that? I think I know it. And you can see how the environment affects her. It can be so valuable when you just let your dog think it out sometimes rather than saying, sit. But dogs have their moments, and when they're in new environments, there it is. It becomes harder. Now she's been warmed up, now she understands. Training sessions like that are 30 seconds to 2 minutes at a time. A few minutes went by, Bree decided to do a little bit of training with Veronica, but started to become a bit frustrated because Veronica stopped taking treats. When you're training with positive reinforcement, you have to have something to reinforce your dog with in order to make sure that you can seal in that behavior. And sometimes that's inconvenient when your dog doesn't want the thing that you think should motivate them. Our objective was only to get her socialization out here anyway. I'm fine to just move on from that. Or maybe I could try.
Yes. Well, I said she stopped taking treats, and Zach challenged me, and I think he's winning.
Good. You really have to
By the way, what he just did there was technically an aversive. The dog wanted to go that way. He pulled it the other way on the leash. That same exact moment of changing direction and letting the dog hit the end of the leash, positive only and force-free people love to criticize trainers like Beckman, even though he doesn't use any e-collars, prongs, or choke chains, for doing exactly the same thing they just did here and say that his methods are barbaric.
Now he's on his way to the door because he was perfect there. Sit, stay. Okay. Was Brumley horrible? No. Did Brumley leave me? Yes.
Good. You really have to capitalize on those moments when your dog is really interested in you, really paying attention.
Oh, yes. There we go. Yeah.
Here we have things going on like construction. We started seeing a lot of big equipment, and experience tells me when you have big, loud things that you want to approach those things cautiously. So this is kind of in our theme of always being aware of your environment so you can understand how that's impacting your dog's mental and emotional well-being at that moment. Being able to positively affect the dog's mental and emotional state when you're training them in a favorable way has unbelievable benefits when you are training a dog.
Sounds like that do not go unnoticed by dogs. Just letting her observe the loud sound. You can see the construction equipment over there.
Construction sounds are a great opportunity to expose your dog to loud sounds, assuming that doesn't overwhelm them. The key is to surround the abrasive sounds we're hearing of the construction and the jackhammer with good experiences. So in this case, doing some easy sits for treats is getting the job done.
Look at that. And there's construction in the background.
I actually don't really have anything bad to say about this part. You don't necessarily have to give your dogs treats or toys or anything around something new, like if a dog has never seen construction equipment before. Your dog just has to not associate it with being scary. You could probably get the same exact result if you just stood there calmly and ignored the construction until the dog gets desensitized to it, honestly. In learning theory, it's called habituation. People do it all the time just fine without using treats or toys to make it a positive experience. Remember that whole thing that we watched earlier with Susan Garrett, who was talking about people who just treat their dog for no reason all the time when the dog isn't doing anything? Yeah.
As Bree continues to train Veronica, you can see her mood is uplifted. She's adapted. She's like, all right, I'm into the treats now. We just gave it a little bit of time. She's jumping up. She's excited. We got all this stuff going on. And that is where I want my dog mentally. Much better to have a happy jumping dog, even if you don't like the jumping, than it is to have a calm dog who is borderline shut down because they're afraid to make too many erratic movements. Because we can always tame down that jumping easily.
I would like to reward because the focus is on Brianna, and that's more important than anything.
Okay, here's where I have the biggest problem with this video.
She's jumping up. She's excited. We got all this stuff going on. And that is where I want my dog mentally. Much better to have a happy jumping dog, even if you don't like the jumping, than it is to have a calm dog who is borderline shut down because they're afraid to make too many erratic movements.
I would rather have a dog that is happy and jumping on me is easy to say when you have a little 10-pound rat dog. If you have a 130-pound Rottweiler going on a walk with grandma who would fall over and crack her head the second a light breeze blows by, not so much. Also, let's get into what he's saying here for a moment. Better to have a happy jumping dog, even if you don't like the jumping, than it is to have a calm dog who is borderline shut down because they're afraid to make too many erratic movements. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of clips with various different dogs, all trained with the use of aversive tools. Not all, but a lot of them younger than both of Zach's dogs. A lot of them dogs who previously had reactive aggression issues or were extremely fearful before they were trained using aversive tools. And you tell me whether or not these look like completely suppressed, unhappy dogs that are just completely petrified of interacting with the real world.
The customs there. Raven.
Raven, bitte. Luna. So, geht.
People talk about off-leash obedience, but very few people can actually demonstrate it. And here at Shield K9, we demonstrate real off-leash obedience in real settings on a daily basis. If you want your dog to be like this, you can come train with us in person, or if you're not in the country, you can train with us online. Even if you are in the country and you want to train online, you're welcome to come train online. Now, our course covers everything from how to e-collar train your dog. Yes, I said e-collar train. There's a lot of courses that purport to teach people how to e-collar train, but we actually show you how to use the e-collar, not just to train a sport dog, but actually to train your dog to do real functional things. Okay? Whether your dog has previous training, whether your dog has no training, our course covers all of that. We assume your dog has no training. And we show you how to build your dog from the ground up and have a dog that is completely reliable off-leash. So you can enjoy everything from walking in a busy urban environment to going on a hike, going camping, have a dog that is completely off-leash, completely reliable, completely trustworthy. That's what everybody wants. If you have a dog that's over 6 months of age, if your dog has some training, no training, it doesn't matter. Our Elite Off-Leash Obedience course is for you. We will teach you how to train your dog from the ground up. Complete on and off-leash obedience, complete control, complete reliability under any circumstances, under any distraction. Many hours of one-on-one instruction from the head trainer, myself, as here at Shield K9. I'm going to show you how to take your dog to the next level. Whether you've got a family pet or a working K9, this obedience is for you. Complete control, complete reliability, complete off-leash obedience. I can't imagine anybody, whatever the purpose of your dog is, that doesn't need this level of control. Dizzy, kettle, good girl, okay, kettle, good. Seats, butts, seats, butts. How do you go from this? Butts, seats, butts, to this? Feet up, up. From this? Good boy. To this. Place. Good boy. From this? To this. And this? And this. And this. Kill. And this. Kill. And this. Whether it's your first puppy or your fifth puppy, people always have lots of questions. Socialization, house training, obedience training, manners, and so much more. We are happy to announce that our Elite Puppy Foundations course is now available exclusively online. Hours of detailed instruction with me, Haz, the head trainer here at Shield Canine. Learn how we take the dogs from puppies to the high-performance dogs that you see all over our YouTube channel and social media. Whether you have a working canine, a sport dog, or just an active family companion, this course is for you. It is the best course available online right now. Train your puppy from 0 all the way to a well-trained adult capable of complete on and off leash obedience in any environment, no matter what distraction, no matter what location, complete control. All right, go on. I think it's going. Call him. I know.
Now, I don't know the exact time frame of training for every one of the dogs, but from what I understand of Shield Canine's training program, it's generally 4 to 6 weeks on average. And I don't know, they seem like pretty calm, happy, normal dogs to me. All of them are walking completely off leash, unlike Zach's dog that has to go everywhere on a 4-foot tether at all times and still can't be trusted to even walk across a crosswalk or past other dogs after 8 months of training. Ah, but right, I forgot. He did go and take his dogs off leash later in another video, so let's go check that out and then compare his dog's obedience, which should be just as good or better using positive only as dogs using meanie tools like e-collars, prongs, or choke chains.
Zach George, I'm a dog trainer, and I don't use intentional physical aversive methods. My wife Bree and I are raising and training our 2 young dogs and showing you how we teach them everything. If you're one of those people who has a dog and they don't listen to you off leash and you want to know how to get there, today's video will help. We're going to get into the details of walking that line between letting your dog do things that are natural and important for them to do and getting them to listen to you when you need them to. Bree went out into the wild to find an acceptable place to spend some quality training time with our dogs.
It's got a fence all the way around. The first thing we do is let our dogs sniff around and explore.
To see this magical dog training field that Bree had discovered. I love places like this to continue to test and improve off-leash reliability with inertia. It's important to regularly test and remind our dogs, hey, this is how we behave when we're in places like this. I don't know about you guys, but this is what I consider true off-leash training, really being methodical and going through the steps to make sure you're laying a strong foundation so your dog knows how to listen to you moving forward.
You can see, like, she's aware that she's in a brand new place, so she's glancing around, so I'm trying to keep her focused on the game, because there will be times when we're in a brand new place where I don't have the option to let her explore and you're focused. That's the huge benefit of new environments, even as your dog gets into the more intermediate to advanced stages of training and off-leash training and so on. Having her stay is a good opportunity to practice stay. Come!
It's also a good idea to put a long lead. I often do this with my own dogs when I'm in public environments, just for peace of mind for any outlier events that might happen that I don't predict. This is how we can train our dogs to listen to us without having to rely on something like an electric collar, for example.
And his argument will be, well, just keep your dog on a long line all the time. And now again, we get back into definitions. What is it properly trained?
See, she's struggling with the sense there, but makes the decision to come back. Inertia's doing a great job. We have this young man over here with his airplane. Inertia doing her thing, staying nice and focused. We like to see that. So I do this pretty regularly with her to keep her well adjusted in public and just taking small steps. There was a time when this would have been very challenging for her. Looks like she's very focused on me right now. Come
On our way down to the beach to give the dog some recreation, Inertia loves playing fetch on sand and on the beach. I can't even tell you how much she loves it. Allowing Inertia to run and play like this and do something as natural as running and chasing and biting something to fulfill her inner dog instincts in acceptable ways. In this environment where we're playing fetch, you can see that Inertia is in a totally uncontrolled environment. In this environment where we're playing fetch, you can see that Inertia is in a totally uncontrolled environment. In this environment where we're playing fetch, you can see that Inertia is in a totally uncontrolled environment. If she were to run away, I would not be able to chase her down, but I'm very confident in the communication that we build that she'll stay focused on me and come to me when I call it. But since I'm in public, I do put the flexi back on her while we continue to walk. I think retractable leashes are good to use with a dog that's pretty well trained. It allows you to give them a lot of area to roam, and it lets other people know, hey, my dog is leashed and under control, so you're not making members of the public uncomfortable that your dog is unleashed. Free walks like this are a huge part of our dog training culture in our family. We love to do this virtually every single day, wherever we are, weather permitting. When you start looking at raising and training a dog, it's a total experience, right? We're not just focused on teaching these basic behaviors. We want to make sure that our dogs are having those natural experiences that they crave and require. With them in harmony like that, it's a lot easier to teach them, and they're much more likely to be well behaved. During walks like this too, I like to regularly test behaviors, just a handful of times, like come when called or heel.
and she's pretty immersed in her environment right now.
By doing this when they're really immersed in their walk, it's a good way just to make sure that we always have that great communication between each other.
Inertia, come.
And if inertia feels like it, we'll throw in some heel training. So there's value in doing spontaneous training like this for very short periods of time. Because you don't want to burn out your dog on their free walk while they're having a good time, but yet you also want to let them know, hey, there are going to be times when you are interested in your environment that I still want you to listen to me on things like heel. And lately we have some new people who have made it clear they think I cannot train dogs. So I am obliged to show you my dog listening to me off leash in an uncontrolled environment to prove that I can train my own dog.
I say, okay, no problem. Let's prove it. Not in I guarantee you they did this either in like an empty building or they did this in an empty field like this one, okay? Now, you don't use an e-collar to train behaviors in sterile environments that are free of competing motivators. What you do is you use the e-collar because it creates reliability, but you also, if you know really what you're doing with it, create speed with the e-collar. Now, if they were really interested in effective science, so to speak, what they would have done is they would have taken the dog to a place where there's a lot of competing motivators. Like, for instance, they should have released like 10 bunnies in the room, okay? Or taken them to a place like a busy park setting where there's everybody around. Just release the dogs, let them go free, and then call the dogs and see which ones did better. That would be a more realistic training evaluation because now you're adding real world. Most people don't live in a place like this. Most people actually have a lot of things going on around, and that's where the dogs fail in their behavior. So regardless, we are going to replicate the study here because here at Shield Canine, we love science. You're going to see me duplicate this study with 3 dogs that have gone through a lot of e-collar training. Now, if the study's true, they're not going to be very responsive, they're not going to be very fast, and they're going to be really stressed out. So let's find out. Let's find out if those things are true. Now, for later. Now, if I was a dishonest trainer, I would just show you this video of this dog in the open field, which is what a lot of trainers do. They get dogs in for fear, anxiety, and they'll show the dog kind of like playing with the trainer in the field or eating food from their hand or something. Like, look, it's all fixed. And because you don't know, you would believe it and be like, oh wow, that's a fantastic trainer. They really know what they're doing. Anyways, where the rubber meets the road, that's why I don't give those videos any credence. Where the rubber meets the road is not in the backyard. It's not in the training facility. It's not in the training field. It's in public. Okay, that's where the rubber meets the road. And a lot of trainers will never show the finished product in public, but we're going to do that.
Okay, so now that we've seen the high levels of Zach's off-leash dog training, which clearly the people with the other tools couldn't possibly compete, let's actually go and look at some of the dogs used training tools like an e-collar. And don't worry, I'm going to use people other than Shield K9 for this one because it wouldn't really be fair to just point to only one trainer and say that that's scientific evidence or indisputable proof of what I'm saying, because just one trainer, that would be anecdotal. But if we look at multiple trainers, including some trainers that I've never even heard of or watched their channel before now, that should give us a better picture.
Come on. Can you sit? Sit. Down. Down. Heel. Heel. Come on. Come on.
don't know how you do it.
He's a good boy. He's a very good papa. And a very happy one.
Oh, you want to my whole life.
So we're gonna watch this first because it was so good. I'm gonna delete these as we go. All right, so Matthew. First off, look at this stern fucking face, hard as nails. He said, I can't even believe I need to make this fucking video right now, but I'm gonna make it anyways, in front of this literal wall of books about behavior, psychology, foundations of animal behavior. He even has Karen Pryor's Don't Shoot the Dog over here, Training Dogs of Method, Effective Neuroscience, the Neuroscience of Emotion. Like he literally, you know that he put this up saying, hey, fuckface. I do actually know a little bit about this.
Yeah, Ivan does.
I just love it. He just looks annoyed.
Oh yeah,
annoyed. He said, "This fucking guy." Mm-hmm. He said, "Yeah, the comment right. YouTube influencer Zach George challenged me to vlog wars." This is my response. All right, here we go.
All right, let me make this quick. This will be my only video response to Zach George, since apparently he was the only person that didn't get much from my video presentation. So here we go, Zach. The purpose of my presentation is to point out proof that there is no consensus on the positive-only approach, not amongst the trainers, not amongst the scientists. When it comes to dog training, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. I would say, though, that in the majority of scientific community, what I refer to in my presentation is all well accepted. This isn't just some fly-by-night YouTube influencer stuff. The credibility of a study is never ever determined based on its age.
One of Zach's big things that he said in the comment section to Ivan's presentation that he made was, well, these studies are all older than the studies that I showed, right? Yeah. But the thing is, like he was saying, like just because it's older doesn't mean that it's not credible anymore, right? Unless it was actually proven that it was incorrect, like the study was repeated and proven to have different results, that would be the only thing that would discredit the actual study that was given, right? And the point he's making here is not my science is right and your science is wrong. The point he's making is, as he just said, right, there is not a congruent and consistent consensus amongst the scientists or the trainers. The veterinarian behaviorists have come to their consensus of what they've interpreted from the science, but they are not the scientists that are doing these studies either, right? They are pulling from the science, and they're making their interpretation and then putting out their agenda from that.
I'm talking about in-depth, trustworthy studies that actually have substance. You mentioned peer review. Sadly, the lack of peer review is a significant issue when evaluating the credibility of the positive reinforcement studies. Simply being cited in follow-up study does not make them legitimate or trustworthy. I also know that my video presentation ruffled your feathers, and this is exactly what it's intended to do. Why I feel comfortable suggesting an alternative view to the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behaviorists is also explicitly well explained in my presentation.
Which, to clarify that, is because there is no consensus, right? And because, as he stated in his presentation, there are potential agendas behind why the Veterinarian Society is pushing these certain methods, et cetera, which I think is very logical.
Between you and me, there is no ball to roll. I'm not hiding behind mission statements and propaganda prepared for me by someone else. At this point, I understand that you like to feed the algorithms for YouTube channel, and that's totally fine. I'm sure some influencer will take you up on your silly vlog idea. I'm not about playing the YouTube game, getting likes and subs for advertising dog treats and perpetuating the messages my sponsors write for me. I'm a dog trainer and a teacher, and that's it. You feel quite uncomfortable having your statements being challenged in a live discussion with me because I will expose you. There will be no one to prepare you. There will be
the dead face. I'll expose you. I know. With the accent, I'll expose you.
And then there will be nobody to prepare you. I was like,
no advisors or ChatGPT, just you and I talking. However, I come to realize you're only trying to plug yourself to be a relevant person in this important conversation, but unfortunately, you're not. I'm soon going to have conversation with those who have the knowledge to discuss, those who are okay to be challenged, those who will challenge me back, and debate with legit knowledge and experience. Have a good one, Zach. Now, to everyone else that is watching, I want to thank you for sharing my presentation. It's already making a difference.
Damn.
So Ivan basically just hit him with the "fuck you, bro"
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny. And he's just like, this is not even worth my time. So here's the thing, right? So what Ivan is saying, right? A couple key points as he was kind of throwing some jabs, right, that are important in that conversation are one, there's something to be said about when you're only ever going off of information that somebody else is preparing for you, right? Meaning, you said this, I trust you as an organization, so there is absolutely going to be zero questioning of it ever, and I am going to essentially just regurgitate that information back down and just basically say it in my own words, right? Now listen, obviously, there are people that are more intelligent than me, right? Ivan is a way fucking better dog trainer than I ever probably will be, and a smarter guy as far as this stuff is concerned than I probably ever will be in this side of things. But even as I watch his videos, I try my best to ask myself the question as I'm reading it, does this make sense, right? Are there things that need to be questioned as far as this conversation is concerned, right? And as far as this presentation is concerned, I don't really think there was much at all that I formally disagreed with. But there are plenty of dog trainers that I highly respect, and I have taken things from the standpoint of been influenced by or learned methods from or whatever, that there are other things that they do that I'm like, I don't fully agree with that, right? I have a differing opinion or whatever, and I think that's normal, and I think that's okay. And I think that from Zach's point of things, right, you could agree with what the Veterinarian Society is telling you, right? And you could think that they're more qualified to have this conversation or whatever it may be, but you could also ask critical questions as far as, hey, are some of these questions people are asking or criticizing about it, are any of them actually valid? Are there follow-up questions to be had? If I was in a position where somebody was, we get comments all the time about things, some from people that like us, some people that don't like us, some that people are trolling us, this and that, and I really try to engage with everybody from the standpoint of asking not just how do I defend my position further, but is there anything that's valid or accurate behind these points? And I've done that when we watched that first Zach George video where there was plenty of stuff that I was like, you are right about this, right? I do agree with you about this. I do think we could be better as far as this is concerned, but there's again some more nuance to the conversation that needs to be had, right? So I think that's one important conversation that needs to be had, or question that needs to be asked, right? And then the second one is if I really do say it, there's nothing else that I needed to have questioned about this, right? Like it's totally accurate. I believe it to its fullest. Sitting down and having the conversation with somebody that's going to challenge you on those opinions, that's something I thrive for, right? I like being challenged as far as my opinions are concerned. I like when I have a client that comes in that asks, why are you doing it that way? Why wouldn't you do it this way? Because it helps me to either find out if there are holes in my statements, right? Find out if I know as much about it as I think I do, because if I do, I can have that conversation and I could, basically completely argue any point that might come my way, right? Or two, force yourself to then kind of challenge yourself conversationally a little bit more, right? And I think that is, I think that's an extremely important thing to be done in this world. And you can tell people like Ivan, like he said, like I'm gonna have conversations soon, and he's referring to, he's done a couple podcasts since with different scientists, right? Of people that are probably smarter than him in certain areas that he's able to challenge back and forth and just dig deeper into it to expand his knowledge, right? The whole point of this is not to win. The whole point of this is to make yourself more intelligent and more understanding of stuff. So whatever. So Ivan basically said, fuck you, I'm not engaging in this in a very funny way. We'll talk about some of the things that he's been doing over the course of obviously this last week or so, and why some of it is so just bullshit, frankly, right? And dangerous and unfair of him, right? And we'll talk about how my opinions as to why he still to this day, aside from doing these blasted videos like this, refuses to have a conversation with anybody of an opposing side past just a back and forth video like this, right? So Ivan Balabanov, who was part of the kind of Zach George Dog Daddy controversy, or the balance training versus force-free kind of controversy, he made a post just yesterday, I believe, basically like, I'm trying to get in touch with Zach George. He currently got a ton of funding and is working with, let me pull the post here. I'll just make sure that I'm accurate about all of this.
We screenshot that too when you get it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so he said, I need some help to connect. I've reached out to Zach George a few times to invite him to join me in conducting a study comparing the effectiveness and ethical considerations of positive reinforcement only and quote-unquote shock-based dog training methods. Surprisingly, he has not responded to me. It could be that I'm not successful in reaching him. This invitation stems from his previous critique of my presentation, The Real Facts of Science-Based Dog Training, where he questions the relevance of the research I cited because it is outdated. Given our collaboration with a respected canine research lab, I believe Zach's participation would demonstrate his commitment to evidence-based practices, aka force-free dog training, would demonstrate his commitment to evidence-based practices, which he promotes to the millions of people who follow him on social media. The offer remains open, and we hope he'll consider it for the great benefit of dogs and their owners, right? So basically, he's got funding. He's working with a lab that can do testing on different things, right? And he is looking to provide current research and evidence disproving some of the force-free claims, disproving some of the force-free articles, which, by the way, if you listen to our podcast last week with Danny Wells, he was mentioning a man named Jamie, who's a trainer out in the UK that is very, very fluent in the articles and the studies that are disproving the balance training side of the argument. We are working on getting him on the podcast as well. Guys, this next month or so, there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming on this podcast, right? And I really... Obviously, like I'm team, like we're podcasters partially, right? We want to put out entertaining content for you guys. We want to share our dog training stories. We want to help you guys as listeners and stuff like that. But in this world, per that conversation we had last week with Danny, there are serious things moving in the dog world and people trying to destroy what it is that we're doing, right? They want to make it very, 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 very challenging for us to be able to help you. They want to make it illegal for the things that we're doing right now to help you with your dog. They want to make that stuff illegal, right? So anybody that's a listener here that has either worked with us and been benefited through our training process or has worked with a similar trainer to us and has been benefited by that process or had their life changed by that process, they want to make that illegal. And in the UK, they were almost successful in getting it to a point where they made a national mandate, or whatever you can, I don't know if that's national or not, whatever. But they made it a mandate that they were going to make it illegal to do that. Just think about that for a minute. Literally, it is breaking the law. You could have your dog taken from you. You could be charged tens of thousands of dollars in fines. You could be put in jail over some of this kind of stuff. All for the things we do every single day to help our clientele, right? While you got doofuses like this on the fucking internet with 3.7 million subscribers just on his YouTube channel alone that are weaponizing those followers to shut down anybody that is making a name for themselves, that's helping clients, that's out there in the trenches. Dog, if you like him or not, he is out there in the real world training dogs every single day. People that have troubled dogs that they're going to need to put their dog down or those dogs are ruining their life, and he's helping them overcome these issues. And those clientele are saying he's helping us, right? And they're making up claims. And you're going to see this video. I'm sure I haven't watched it yet. It's going to be just full of bullshit claims of, well, science says that what he's doing is going to make things worse. But then you have the clientele saying, but it's not. It's helping us. Exactly. And guys like this are just sitting behind their screen making videos like this, not actually training dogs. I would be very, very curious how many dogs Zach George has actually trained in the last 3 months. I bet you the number is under 10.
Oh, I'm sure.
I bet you it's under 10. I bet you it might be under 5. That doesn't include his personal dogs, clients' dogs, and I would bet you most of them are puppies because the videos he's posted on his Instagram of dogs he's currently training are all dogs that are like under 6 months old. So listen, I say this because this is all very, very serious business. And though I love sharing the dog training side of things, and I work with dogs every single day at the training center and are helping people, this is a big, big thing that I can do with my small following that it is. Fucking peanuts in comparison to these guys, but I can help spread awareness of this and make sure people know how shitty some of this stuff is.
Yeah.
Right? So let's do this. We're going to start. I'm not going to talk on American Standard Canine story because when he comes on, I want him to share his side of what happened to him. He had a very serious one lately. You can go on his YouTube channel, watch his response to all the hate, and basically he shares a little bit of the information on what happened to him. But we're going to talk on this kind of Zach George dog daddy side of things here. And then in addition to that, like I said, Ivan, he tried to reach out to him to get him to come do this, and he had no interest in it. And I'm trying to wonder if we should watch this video first or we should read Zach George's like really quick back and forth with Ivan on why he won't do this study with him. Which one do you think we should do first?
Read that first.
Let's read this first so we're not jumping all over the place. Okay, so I read Ivan invited Zach George to come do a study.
Okay.
So let's read Zach George's reply to this. Thank you for the invitation to collaborate on a comparative study between positive reinforcement and shock-based dog training methods. While the notion of academic rigor is one I wholeheartedly endorse, I must decline for several key reasons. Firstly, there's already a robust scientific consensus that strongly supports positive reinforcement methods over aversive techniques. The consensus spans multiple disciplines, including psychology, ethology, and veterinarian science, among others. Given this, revisiting the topic would be akin to conducting a study to prove that apples fall downwards due to gravity. While intriguing, it isn't the best use of resources when the science is already well established. Okay, so basically what he's saying is, we already have a study that was done. But as the years go on, and no different than he disproved Ivan's studies due to the age of those studies, your studies are getting older by the day. So at what point do your studies become disproved due to the fact that they're old? And wouldn't you want to stay current on continuing to prove your side of the equation, especially in this type of a format?
Yeah, for sure.
Secondly, a study incorporating aversive methods raises significant ethical and methodological concerns, including the potential for results skewed by stress or fear response. I want to stop right there. So let me read that again. Secondly, a study incorporating aversive methods raises significant ethical and methodological concerns, including the potential for results skewed by stress or fear response. So what he's saying right there is, I'm scared that your results will prove falsely that you're right. That's what that means. Yep. That's what that means. Because here's the thing. All of your other studies that you have state that you could test for stress, you could test for fear, you could test cortisol levels, you could do all those types of things, right? So just conduct the study in a way that if you're so good at recognizing the stress or fear responses, I'm sure a trained scientist that knows what they're doing would not be deceived by that, Zach George. Participation could suggest to my audience that I find some merit in shock-based methods, which would be contrary to the principles I and many in the scientific community espouse. We all have an ethical obligation to prioritize the emotional and psychological well-being of dogs. Shock-based methods are inherently at odds with this principle. Again, further saying, it would suggest to the audience he finds merit in shock-based methods because it would probably show that the results gotten by shock-based or balanced methods are faster, more effective, or at a minimum, equally effective to your force-free methods. Yeah. Again, the reason why he's declining this further says that if you read between the lines of this, right, we all have an ethical obligation to prioritize the emotional and psychological well-being of dogs. Shock-based methods are inherently at odds with this principle. Find some merit in shock-based methods, which would be contrary to the principles I and many in the scientific community espouse. What he's saying is, I'm not going to be a part of a study unless the study is done with an intentional bias to prove that the shock-based methods are bad. Because all of the studies that have been done so far are done with the bias of intentionally trying to figure out a way to study what they're studying in a way that makes them look bad or puts them in a bad light. Yep. Right? Let's look at what that could mean, right? As they're studying this, they could look at the second, let's say I'm stopping jumping, right? And we're trying to determine, can jumping be stopped faster and more effectively with shock-based methods, right? And obviously we know you could stop jumping in 2 seconds with a correction, right? You might be able to temporarily stop jumping with force-free methods, but it's going to take probably quite a bit longer than that. Yeah, for sure. So instead of testing the study in a way that goes through the whole span of from start of the training through the correction through later on when the jumping is totally gone and rooted out, or prove it's gone for good and the stress from the initial correction is then gone at that point, they're going to test just the moment we give the correction, which obviously is going to cause a degree of stress on the dog because we're teaching the dog not to do that thing. They say, oh, look, there's stress right there. You made the problem worse. You created stress in the dog by giving that correction, as opposed to testing 20 minutes later when the dog's like, oh, I just don't jump, I don't get a correction, I'm not stressed anymore. Right? Yep. So the studies, you see how they can be spun in a way that proves whatever point it is you're trying to do. And Zach George knows that we can do the exact same thing, and now we have the funding to be able to do the exact same thing. We have the resources to do the exact same thing. So I don't want to be a part of it because your study might prove you're right. Next, the most critical oversight in advocating for shock-based methods is the neglect of a dog's emotional well-being. It's not merely about achieving a physical position or an obedience command. It's about the means by which we instruct the dog to arrive at these behaviors. Emotional governance, how a dog feels before, during, and after the training is paramount. When we resort to pain or discomfort, we are not merely teaching a behavior. We are instilling an emotional state, often one of fear or anxiety, with the behavior we're trying to inhibit. We don't want the dog to jump. We want the dog to have an association of something negative with jumping. Yeah. These emotional states have lasting consequences, not just in the training session, but in the overall dog's well-being and interactions with the world. In modern scientifically supported dog training, there's no room for methods that disregard or compromise a dog's emotional state. We must strive for techniques that are not only effective, but also promote a healthy emotional and psychological life for our dogs. Anything less is not just outdated, it's ethically indefensible. So basically, a long-winded way of saying, I'm not going to do it because you might prove that you're right. Don't you care about the dog's emotional well-being when that's the exact thing that he's trying to study? Yes. So I've replied, I'm glad you responded to the invitation. I have zero interest to go further trying to convince you. The year is 2023, which means that any study that is conducted today must meet ethical standards. That is the beauty of it. No one is interested in strapping a collar on a dog and abusing them. This isn't the goal or focus of one of the world's most esteemed canine research institutions and universities. Now, the reason why I said no one's interested in strapping a collar on the dog and abusing them is because most of the studies that are done in a way to try to paint the e-collar in a bad light have been done in a way where the tool has been misused or intentionally used in very extreme, unfair ways to try to show an increased stress response in cases. Yeah. You focus on the efficacy, but ignore the fact that I did also say ethical outcomes are not going to be ignored. That's unfortunate. Science is not permanent. It evolves through new discoveries, changing paradigms. Paradigms? Yeah. That's a stupid way to spell that word. Improved methods, reevaluation of data, societal shifts, and continual testing. It seeks to refine and expand our understanding rather than establishing fixed truths. Having said that, I'm not surprised you're declining the opportunity. For the record, you're not the only one you're reaching out to. There are influential trainers that are sincerely interested in the advancements and improvement. We all want that. It may very well be that the study proves R+ is superior in efficacy and welfare altogether. Anyways, it's all good on my end. So he basically said, I knew you were going to be a bitch about it. Yeah. And then one last reply, and then we'll move on to this video. So Zach replied, Ivan, I appreciate your follow-up and the clarification around the ethical standards that any modern study must meet. You're absolutely right. Science is an evolving discipline, open to continual testing and refinement. However, while ethics may be a part of your study's focus, the concern for many in the community, myself included, is the perpetuation of methods that have continuously shown to be less effective and potentially harmful. These methods, even when packaged within a study that claims to consider ethics, could potentially normalize or legitimize them, which means that it could normalize them by proving that they're better.
Yeah.
By proving that they're not harmful.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, man.
I agree that new discoveries and societal shifts influence science. My reluctance stems from not wanting to be a part of a study that may inadvertently give weight to outdated methods that I and the larger scientific community within the field find to be less effective and less humane. Again, giving weight to them because they're better, right? Like this is like a case in point example of somebody avoiding simply because they know in their heart they're wrong.
Yep.
This is why let me address this. Thank you for extending the invitation and for understanding my position. I'm pleased to hear that there are other influential trainers interested in contributing to the advancement of the field. And then he signed it, Zach George. Oh, great. I'm glad. We didn't know that you were writing based on your bubble saying that you were writing. Okay. So here's the thing, right? This is why. They say, like, people don't debate things that they're not confident in, right? Myself, we've invited 8 gazillion force-free trainers to come on the podcast and talk to us, or just talk to us in general, right? Outside of a back-and-forth Facebook comment discussion, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that disagreed with me, I would be happy to come on a podcast with them, have a conversation with them, and discuss and debate the feelings that I have towards a particular topic because I'm confident in the things that I say, right? I feel strongly that they actually are true, and I feel I understand them well enough, that I understand the counterpoints well enough to know that I could debate it easily, right? The other side, if they felt the same way, would have that conversation, would feel the same way, but they don't, which is why they refuse to have these conversations.
100%.
All right, so that just happened last night. So